We are back in the capital of Greece, Athens, to talk about the assassination of a senior United States Central Intelligence Agency officer at the end of 1975. Welcome to Spy Spots. The position of COS or Chief of Station is not for your everyday spy. In summary, COS is responsible for any CIA operation and activity in the area of responsibility of that station. Consequently, those officers are typically very experienced and operate under diplomatic cover. Back in the 1970s, the CIA station for Greece was based inside the US Embassy in Athens. Now let's briefly talk about Richard Dick Welch, a graduate of Harvard for Greek History and Literature who joined the CIA's clandestine service in 1951, right after graduation at the age of 22. Actually, former CIA Senior Operations Officer Ron Estes gave an interview to the Association of Former Intelligence Officers in which he mentioned how Richard Welch was recruited by the CIA. Here is what he said.
Dick graduated from Harvard in 1951. The Harvard class, 5% of the Harvard class of 1951 was recruited into CIA, and Dick was in that class.
After finishing his training as an intelligence officer, he was placed in Greece under the cover of being a civilian employee of the Department of the Army. That was in February of 1952, where he also started learning modern Greek. In the period of 1952 to 1958, he operated as a case officer in Greece, recruiting and handling spies, as well as conducting covert and clandestine operations in the region. In those early days of the Cold War, the primary focus of the CIA was anti-communist missions. With Turkey being the primary adversary of Greece, it's reasonable that after returning to CIA's headquarters in 1958, having spent 6 years in Greece, he was assigned to work on Turkish affairs in the CIA. After the completion of this assignment, from 1960 to 1964, he was stationed in Cyprus, since he already had a deep understanding of the region, culture, and language. However, the CIA has not officially confirmed this to this day. Former CIA operations officer Ron Estes has stated that he worked with Richard Welch when they were both clandestinely operating from Nicosia, Cyprus. According to the CIA, after this over a decade-long European focus, he was assigned to CIA's Western Hemisphere Division, later renamed to Latin America Division, still under CIA's clandestine service. His first deployment there was in Guatemala for the period of 1965 to 1967. With 15 years of spy service across Greece, Cyprus, and Guatemala, his next assignment was as the Chief of Station in Guyana, 1967 to 69, then Mexico, 69 to 72, and then again Chief of Station in Peru, 1972 to 1975. It's important to highlight that in Greece, following a military coup, from 1969 to 1974, the country was under military dictatorship, the Greek junta as it's widely known, something that the general public disliked, and as it became known several years later, it was heavily influenced by the CIA, potentially by Richard Welch too. Although back then there was no concrete evidence of CIA's involvement in the coup, rumors created a major anti-American movement, especially for the CIA. The fall of the Greek junta was in the heart of the Cold War, and both Western and Eastern powers were trying to get influence and control over the new government of Greece. To complicate things further, in 1974, Turkey invaded Cyprus, which, as it also became known many years after, had involvement from both the United States and the United Kingdom, one of the closest allies of the United States. Protests and riots in Greece targeted the US Embassy, both for not helping Greece and Cyprus repel the Turkish invasion, and due to rumors of British and American backing of parts of those events. Considering those significant geopolitical events and Welch's deep knowledge of both Greece and Cyprus, it's not unreasonable to see how the CIA decided to place him as the chief of station in Greece in 1975, directly from his assignment in Peru. As it became later known from leaked documents, his experience wasn't the sole reason for this assignment. He was forced to leave Lima, Peru, because, according to local authorities, he was the one running a covert operation to overthrow the Peruvian ruling party, something that later became known as the Limazo coup attempt, and which resulted in the violent suppression of it by the Peruvian armed forces by February 5, 1975. According to Ron Estes, he asked him to apply for this position as he knew that in 1974 the current COS, Stacy Hulse Jr., had applied to get transferred, and both Welch and Estes liked working together and enjoyed staying in Greece. Of course, we cannot know if the CIA decided for this assignment to Greece based on any of the above or other factors that aren't publicly known. Now, according to CIA's official press statement, in the spring of 1975, at the age of 45, Dick was asked to go to Greece to lead a station there. He agreed immediately, telling friends that, for him, going to Greece was like going home. "I'm pinching myself to have a chance to go to the country that I really love," friends remember him saying. He arrived in Greece in July of 1975 under diplomatic cover of US Ambassador's first secretary, and almost immediately, a previously unknown armed group named 17 November had placed him under covert surveillance. 17 November was unknown since they hadn't executed any assassination before. This was going to be their first one. The previous COS that he was replacing was Stacy Hulse Jr. The deputy station chief was Ron Estes that we already introduced. Actually, here's what former CIA senior intelligence officer Ron Estes tells us about the operational environment in Greece around that time as a colleague of Richard Welch.
In the junta, when the Turks invaded, Ioannidis told the Greek people on television and the press that the United States was partially responsible for the Turkish invasion because, as a member of NATO, the United States could have stopped the Turkish invasion. Ioannidis also said the United States encouraged me to overthrow Makarios, and when I did, they pulled the rug out from under me. The entire population of Greece overnight became hostile to the United States. They burned 71 American cars, attacked the embassy, and sacked the first floor of the embassy, and killed Dick Welch because of the Ioannidis' claim of American responsibility for the Turkish invasion.
But how did 17 November knew who Richard Welch actually was? After all, he was stationed under diplomatic cover. In the CIA's declassified archive, we can find this document. Last week in Athens, CIA Section Chief Richard Welch was shot to death outside his home. The assassin has not yet been caught. But over the weekend, the director of the CIA pointed an accusing finger not at extremists abroad, but at a group here in Washington which devoted itself full-time to muckraking the US intelligence community. The group calls itself the Fifth Estate and had uncovered Welch's identity and home address in Counter Spy, its quarterly magazine. Now the Fifth Estate is getting death threats. And how did Fifth Estate know about Welch's secret life? As we read, Fifth Estate spokesman Doug Porter says today that they are not to blame for Welch's death, that Welch was known all around the world as a CIA agent. He was originally exposed in 1967 in an East German publication called Who's Who in the CIA. He was exposed when he was in British Guyana in 1969. He was exposed while he was in Peru. He was exposed once again when he went to Greece. And we are not connected with any of those disclosures. The fact is that he was the type of CIA agent who does function under what's known as light cover. They don't give them much cover at all because they want people to know that they can go to the CIA. There has to be an obvious connection for them to be able to function in a politically powerful way, and Welch was one of those people. Basically, Doug Porter describes intelligence officers under diplomatic cover in his statement. In the Spy Collection Library, we also have a copy of that Who's Who in the CIA. It was published in 1968 by German journalist Julius Mauder with direct support from East Germany Stasi and the Soviet Union's KGB as it later became known. And indeed, here you can see the details of Richard Welch with a list of some of his operational assignments, specifically his date of birth, cover stories and locations. We read Nicosia in Cyprus, Washington in the US, Guatemala, and Georgetown in the US again. It's noteworthy that Stacy Hulse Jr.'s details were also leaked in that book. Hulse was the previous COS in Athens, Greece, and in this book we read that he was also stationed in The Hague, Netherlands, Trieste and Rome in Italy, as well as in Washington in the US. And here you can see a video of that counter-spy magazine that included the identity of Richard Welch. However, even a month prior to his assassination, his name was revealed in the English newspaper, Athens News, which had an article with the CIA officers based in Athens. Actually, this was documented in a, now leaked by WikiLeaks, cable from the US Embassy of Greece to the State Department in Washington, D.C. on December 24, 1975. It's a summary of all the events related to the assassination, where we also read that, although we do not, as yet, have any firm clues as to who the perpetrators of this crime are or why they did it, the environment in which we operate here certainly has played a part. You are undoubtedly aware that we continue to be subject to attacks and criticism in the press, although somewhat more muted now, and there has been a renewed upsurge lately of virulent anti-CIA stories based mostly on news stories filed from Washington. This has given a special impetus last month when the English-language Athens News published a list of alleged CIA officials in Athens. Dick Welch was named as the CIA Chief of Station here in his and other stories that followed, which also gave his home address. Some papers also printed pictures of his residence. Those last parts are quite important as his residence, our episode's spy spot, was being used by also the former CIA Chief of Stations, but more on that later. In this 2023 article by The Intercept, we also read another perspective, including quotes from Ron Estes for interviews he gave for the book The Last Honest Man. As we read, in November 1975, Welch's name and home address were published in English language and Greek language newspapers in Athens. The information was obviously leaked by hostile KIP officers, Estes said in the interview, because the only names leaked were those in liaison contact with KIP. CIA's overseas stations often included officers who were in liaison contact with the intelligence service of the local country. Their identities as CIA officers thus declared to the service so they could meet with them and trade intelligence, and others who were not identified so they could spy without the knowledge of the local government. Welch was not hard to find. He lived in a luxurious villa that had been the official residence of the CIA station chief for decades. After his name and home address were published in the press, Estes talked to him about whether he should move, but Welch and Estes concluded that the threat was minimal. We both agreed that political assassination was not part of the fabric of Greek history or culture, Estes recalled. In his 1978 book, Dirty Work, The CIA in Western Europe, co-founder of the Counter-Spy magazine and former CIA case officer who allegedly defected with Cuba's DGI support, Philip Agee, gives a different perspective, saying that Well before the Athens News published the letter naming Welch, the underground organization that killed him had been watching his residence, which for years had been known in Athens as the home of the CIA's chief of station in Greece. In fact, the CIA even warned Welch at the outset of his tour in Athens that his house was marked, and he replied that he preferred to remain living there. Moreover, David Phillips, the head of the Association of Former Intelligence Officers, an arch foe of counter-spy, was reported in the papers shortly after Welch's death to have received a letter from him only 4 days previously, inviting him to come visit us in our home, which is very pleasant, if somewhat notorious. Moreover, diplomatic lists published by the Greek Foreign Ministry confirmed the fact that the house was indeed well known. As early as November 1959, the chief of station, Laughlin Austin Campbell, lived 2 doors away, and in December 1968, chief of station James M. Potts moved to the house which Welch later occupied. In the same book, we can also find the letter that the Athens News newspaper received, which indicated how they learned about this residence. It was published in the Athens News of November 25, 1975, and was titled "Greek Committee Reveals the CIA Menace in Athens." As we read, "We have listened at the American Club in Kifisia, really a hangout for spies, at certain cocktail circuits where the CIA agents who stick together do not imagine we can deduce what they are saying, and to a small extent, when needed, have we had to shadow their coming and going from their buildings. First, we intend to expose the Native American agents who have been sent against us and save the Greek Americans for a later time. The CIA agents have been talking for months about the new head of their group who has been here since the summer. He followed Mr. Stacy Hulse Jr., whose job was to keep General Ioannidis in control, but failed at this. For punishment, he has now been sent off to the small CIA group which they call a station in Canada. The Athens group or station is now under the head of Mr. Richard S. Welch. He's from Connecticut, where he was born in 1929. Soon after he graduated from Harvard University in 1951, he came to Athens, where he worked using US MAGG, the military aid organization, as a cover. It is for the contacts that he made at that time, and also because he speaks Greek, that he has been sent back here again. His job is to see that the Karamanlis government does not get out of control. He also served in Cyprus from 1960 to 1964. He then passed a number of years in Latin America, where he helped to control the countries there on behalf of the American imperialist interests. Just before he came to Greece, he was in Peru. There was a bloody revolt against the government of that country, during which many people lost their lives. It was charged that CIA was behind this revolt. It was time for Mr. Welch to leave Latin America, even if Mr. Hulse had not failed in Greece. Mr. Welch now uses American Embassy cover for his activities. He is listed as a first secretary there. He lives in the usual CIA house where all CIA station leaders have lived at number 5 Queen Frederica in Psychiko. The reader can telephone him for his comments on these accusations at 671-2055. Another change in the CIA organization is signified by the arrival of Mr. Ronald E. Estes. He also worked in this country several years back, usually in the north of Greece. He used the JUS MAGG cover. He then served in Cyprus with Mr. Welch. After that, he joined the State Department for cover reasons, and in 1966 and 1967 he was in Prague under the cover of an economic officer. After a few years in America, at the CIA Center, he served in Beirut as an economic and commercial officer in the American Embassy before coming to Athens. He is again under the cover of JUS MAGG. Mr. Estes is known in CIA circuits as an expert in Russian intelligence matters. In Athens, he first worked for a short period with Mr. Hulse, helping that station leader with the impossible job of controlling General Ioannidis. He is now working with Mr. Welch on the Greek matters. Mr. Estes also lives in the well-known CIA house on number 12 Queen Frederica in Psychiko. The reader can telephone him for his defense against these accusations at number 671-4654. The letter continues with more CIA officers stationed in Greece at that time, but that's out of scope of this Spy Spots episode. In the same book, we can also find some of the communications that 17 November sent to newspapers after the assassination, which detail the attack. Regarding his residence, 17 November wrote that the former station chief, Stacy Hulse, left Athens on May 30, 1975. He was living in the same house, 5 Vasilis Frederikis, in Psychiko. Welch arrived in Athens around the 15th of June. He lived for 3 weeks in a villa of the deputy chief of the CIA, Ronald Estes, number 12 of the same street. For a month or so, the villa was closed. Welch moved into number 5 on Wednesday, July 9th. His driver was also different. He was not the same one Hulse used to have, contrary to what the newspapers wrote. We learned the name of Welch and his function through a very easy means, which we will not reveal for the moment. Welch left with his driver every morning at around 8:30 a.m. and returned between 6:30 and 7:30 p.m. His driver would park his own car, an AMI 6 Orange registered as BE9339, along the sidewalk near the villa. He would get the black Ford registered as CD3131 out of the garden and drive Welch to the embassy. Welch went out at night very seldom, contrary to the deputy who went out nearly every night. Welch was always home before 11 p.m. On weekends he would go out during the day using, since the end of September, a second car, a white Mustang registered as CD3181, which he kept in the garage. Welch went to the movies on Tuesday, November 11th at 6:30 p.m. to the Astron Theatre in the Ambelokipi area with his wife and another woman to see Godfather 2. That night he was driving his white Mustang, which he parked along the sidewalk near the theatre, leaving his key on the dashboard. They sat in the balcony and left about 10 p.m. That night, the black Ford was parked along the sidewalk in front of the main entrance to the villa, and when they arrived home at around 10:30, the conditions for the operation were ideal. While Welch was parking the Mustang in the garage, the two women went into the house. Then he came out through the garage door, walked 15 meters in the darkness towards the black Ford to park it in the garden. We passed by him while he was walking, and it would have been very easy for us to shoot him. There was nobody around. We give these details to show that we had decided on the operation and began the investigation of Welch as soon as he arrived in Athens. That is to say, far before the publication of the Athens newsletter on November 23rd. Still though, to this day, it hasn't been confirmed how 17 November knew about Richard Welch's secret life as the CIA chief of station. It could be any of the above, or something else that we still don't know. Back in Greece, we are at Christmas of 1975, under this highly tense political situation and anti-CIA climate. Specifically, the night of Tuesday, December 23rd, and the US ambassador, Jack B. Kubish, organized a Christmas party at his residence. Richard Welch was attending that, and at approximately 10:30 p.m., he returned with his car to his home. It's important to note that this residence was located just 2 miles, around 3.5 kilometers, away from the US Embassy, in one of the most upper-class areas of Athens, and, as mentioned, the same residence was used by several prior CIA chief of stations in Greece. As you can see here, it's literally almost a straight line from the US Embassy to the house. For the sake of this video, we drove this route a few times, and even during rush hour, it's less than a 10-minute ride. Here on your right you see the building of the US Embassy in Athens. Back to the night of December 23rd, 1975. As Welch was returning to his home, 3 men in a stolen green Simca car jumped out, ordered him to put his hands up, and 2 of them covered his wife and his driver, while a third one shot him 3 times with a 1911 pistol of 45 ACP caliber at extremely close distance. Here's what his then colleague, former CIA senior operations officer Ron Estes, tell us about that night.
The driver got in the car and came to where I was having dinner with my fiancée. I was sitting on the couch while she was cleaning the table. He burst in the front door and told me in Greek, "There's been a shooting. Mr. Welch is down." So I grabbed a blazer and went out the door. My wife, my future wife, asked the driver, who didn't speak English, "What's going on?" And he said in English, "Mr. Welch, shoot, shoot." She screamed at me, "Don't go," but the driver and I went. It was 2 blocks. I arrived in front of the house. Dick was lying on the sidewalk on his back. The steam from his face was a bloody mask. Steam was arising from his face in a steady stream. I knew he was dead. I'd seen enough dead bodies in Korea. I knew he was dead. His wife was kneeling beside him on the sidewalk. A police car arrived with 1 policeman. I asked the policeman to call an ambulance. 5 minutes later, I still heard those sirens. I asked the policeman, "Did you call the ambulance?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Where is he?" He said, "I don't know." I asked him to get out of the car and help Dick's driver and me put Dick in the back seat of his car. I put his wife in the police car because if I were wrong about him dying, I didn't want him dying in the car with her present. So the policeman led us to the hospital where an emergency put him on a gurney, took him to an examining room. The doctor put a stethoscope on his chest and told me, "Pi after, he's gone."
And here's the leaked cable of the US Ambassador Kubish for that night, where among others he wrote that the assassination last night of Dick Welch has sent a sharp shockwave through our embassy and the American community in Greece. As of late this morning, December 24th, we still have no hard information as to who committed this terrible crime and why. The Greek government has been cooperative and vigorous in initiating an extensive investigation and is making a major effort to apprehend those responsible. In addition, senior Greek officials have informed me that additional security measures have been undertaken for the protection of US officials in Greece. As always, all our references are linked in the description in case you want to study the complete US diplomatic cables. And here is some actual footage from the morning of December 24th. According to the CIA, at the time of his death, Dick Welch was the highest-ranking CIA officer killed in the line of duty. He was also the first chief of station to be murdered in a politically motivated assassination. He had received a promotion in November and had celebrated his 46th birthday only 9 days before his death. In Philip Agee's Dirty Work, The CIA in Western Europe, we can find the detailed explanation that 17 November communicated with some newspapers but was never published. The operation itself happened as follows. The car we used was neither a Mercedes nor a Fiat, as described in the press. It was a light green Simca that we had expropriated on December 12th in the Pagrati area. The night of December 23rd, we realized that Welch had gone out. The black Ford was not in the garden as it was every day after 7:30 p.m. and the driver's car was parked by the sidewalk. We deduced that Welch had gone to some reception with the driver. We did not know if there were 2, 3 or 4 in the car, but our action plan covered these possibilities. We parked the car around 9 p.m. on the left side of Mazaraki Street, approximately halfway down the street, and we waited. We knew he would pass by this place, as he always did, and we would wait until 11 p.m. at the latest. At 10:23, we saw the black Ford and we let it pass by. Then it got to the intersection of Vasileos Pavlou and Mazaraki Streets, We started the car and followed them slowly. We let them go down further a little and they parked in front of the garden door, perpendicular to the sidewalk in order to go into the garden. The driver got out of the car, opened the left rear door, and Mrs. Welch got out. Then he turned to open the gate of the garden. At that precise moment, we turned left and we parked slowly, right behind the Ford on the left side of the street. The three of us got out of the car immediately, with our faces covered. As they saw us, the driver turned and said, like it was a joke, "What's happening?" The comrade who was supposed to fire ordered, "Hands up," and went over to the right door where he saw Welch, who had just gotten out of the car. The second comrade threatened Mrs. Welch and the driver with his machine gun. The third of us came around on the right to cut off any flight by Welch to the main door of the villa. The comrade who was to shoot came closer to Welch and ordered again, "Hands up." Welch, who spoke good Greek, answered in English, "What?" At this point the comrade fired 3 shots in rapid succession with his pistol, a Colt .45. With the first shot, Welch fell down. The driver, as soon as he heard the first shot, hid behind the Ford. Mrs. Welch remained still, near us, looking at us. She did not say anything and did not move. Immediately, we went back into the car and left as follows. We turned left on Chacona Street and left again into Narcissus Street, straight ahead till Amarilidos, where we went left, and then right onto Yakinthon Street, where we abandoned the car near the corner of Papadiamandi Street. From there, we drove away in another car, taking all our belongings. As incredible as it seems, that SIM card that we used was not found by the police for more than a week after the action, even though it was less than 1 kilometer from the scene of the action and did not have a license plate. In passing along Kifisia Avenue, which is a main street, it could still be seen. A week later, December 30, we decided to call the newspapers giving its description, and we did this so that the owner could have it back. We had placed 10 cassettes, which were in the car, under the front seat, and we told the newspapers this because we thought the police might take them and say we stole them. Tuesday, we called Anea and Eleftherotypia. The next day, the car was still there. So Thursday evening, we called the English journalist Tong, and the next day the police took the car. We have described the operation in such detail only to show that there is no mystery at all, to show that everything was organized and done in a very simple way, to show that it was us who carried out this operation. This marked the first attack in the history of 17 November. The group tried to communicate their manifesto to several newspapers in Europe, but most ignored it as nonsense since it was an entirely new group that no one had ever heard of, and they had no way of vetting the information mentioned there. Today, it's impossible to find it online, but we found it documented in a Greek book acting as an archive of all of 17 November's manifestos and publications and translated it to English. Here is what the first ever 17 November manifesto said. December 24th, 1975. Execution of the chief of the CIA in Greece. In his recent speech, Ford stated very cynically that the Americans would not hesitate to interfere openly in the internal affairs of other countries when their interests demanded. Similar statements have been made before by Kissinger too. Those two imperialist figures carelessly abandoned the rules of diplomacy and the traditional West European hypocrisy. Of course, they assume that the others are obligated to bring those rules against them. It's the concept of the tyrant, the oppressor, of the world's police. Today, however, dropping all pretense, they announce that with the most raw means, because in practice this has been applied for years, is the mentality that drove Vietnam to a bloodbath and which overthrew Allende, backing Pinochet who supported Franco, is the approach of the impudent and overt crime that doesn't consider unethical the shooting of 5 Basque patriots, but clearly finds unethical the unacceptable execution of their own agents. Our people, however, know very well who is the American imperialism, the number one enemy of our people, the main responsible with the domestic fascists for the countless cases of suffering, calamities and crimes against our people for decades now. Everywhere we turn our eyes, we'll see the hand of the CIA behind it. whether in the assassination of the heroic fighter Beloyani, or the treaties of Zurich and London, whether in the elections of violence and fraud of 61, or the overthrowing of Papandreou in 65 and the creation of the renegades, or the coup of 67 and the backing of the 7 years long tyranny, or the biggest recent case of treason, the treason of Cyprus, with 200,000 refugees, rivers of tears, blood and pain, and with Kissinger expressing his humanitarian feelings. And the crimes and conspiracies never end. They continue today with the cooperation and complicity of the Greek government behind our backs, both for the division of Cyprus and the oil reserves, and who will control the Aegean, for which imperialism will not hesitate to push us to war with Turkey as long as their interests will be met. Enough is enough, no more. The American imperialists and their local agents must understand that the Greek people aren't a herd of sheep. They must understand that our people, not only they won't consume the lies, the provocations and coarse propaganda with which they try to poison it, but also that now they have realized something more important, that the government is tied with its hands behind its back at the car of the American rule and is incapable of doing absolutely anything. Tons of anti-American words and articles translated with a big zero as the result. The motto, "Kick out the Americans," which was one of the main ones from the uprising of November 1973, which dominated nationwide from July 24th and which was roared by 1 million protesters on November 17th, still remains unfulfilled. The Americans not only aren't they leaving, instead the government continuing the taunting, bringing in more. Multinational monopolies from Lebanon. The CIA Center for the Middle East moved from Beirut to Athens. Greece continues to be a free-for-all for Americans, just like it was during the junta. It's the Banana Republic Latin American style in the area of the East Mediterranean. The government is mocking us. The parliament talks without any particular outcome. Most parties taking part in the taunting, they are competing in platonic statements without real-world results. And the Justice Labor? In the trial of April 21st, without even calling the name of the guilty, the CIA and American imperialism. No one can touch the representatives of the American imperialism, the agents of the CIA who continue, undisturbed and protected by our intelligence services, to conspire with various monarchist juntists and some of the so-called anti-juntists against our people and our national interests. This general hypocrisy, the taunting and treason of our people, the sellout of the country are called parliamentary democracy of the West. Dealing with this situation, in the complete bankruptcy and weakness of the institutions, in front of the absence and failure of the known legal routes, there is no other road left but one, for the people to take their lives at their own hands, to fight with their powers using all means available and facing the oppressive violence of imperialism that terrorizes the people for decades, the fair revolutionary violence of the people. It's the only way that the American imperialists understand, as the heroic Vietnamese population proved. As such, we decided to exemplarily execute the master spy of the CIA and chief of station in Greece, Richard Welch, who under diplomatic cover and with the support of the 5 CIA heads of regions in Greece, manages a massive network, a true army of local paid agents inside the government, the ministries, the military and the police, a part of the political parties and the press, its fifth column of imperialism in our country. Richard Welch, as the chief, is jointly responsible for all the crimes that CIA did against our people. He is not an everyday civil servant. He is not a simple execution body, but the chief of station with specific personal responsibility for those decisions. And that responsibility becomes larger from his long prior involvement in Greece in the 50s and 60s, as well as in Cyprus in the period of 60 to 64. The Greek people understand that there is nothing left to wait for from the government, the parliament, the justice and the rest of the institutions which are depraved in people's consciousness. Knows that there is no justice when 104 fascist former ministers are exempted, that the torturers of Halkida are set free, and knows that those who are sentenced, it was just for the publicity and in less than a year all of them will be released. just like it happened with the Huntist agents. The people comprehend that there is no other route apart from the avenue of fight, with support from our own powers, the road of mass protest and dynamic action. That is the only way that might change the regime of dependence and servitude, the regime of the new oppression and terrorism. It's the road that the heroic Athens Polytechnic uprising engraved with blood and demolished the freedomization of Papadopoulos, the road that will be demolished today too, the new fascism under the cover of parliamentarism. It will destroy the regime of monopolies and imperialistic dependence. It will force all foreign military bases and missions to leave and will lead us to a true independence, in the real democracy for the working people and not the undercover fascism, in people's power and socialism. Death to fascism and imperialism, no to the new fascism. The fight continues. Athens, December 1975. It looks like 17 November members really didn't like the fact that they were ignored by all media outlets of the time. Instead, as we read in the now leaked US diplomatic cables, news outlets preferred coming up with all sorts of conspiracy theories. Here is a cable from February 17, 1976, titled "Press Continues Speculation on Welch Case," where we read that the assassination of Dick Welch continues to be of interest to certain sectors of the Greek press in spite of the order by the public prosecutor prohibiting the publication of information with regard to the case. For instance, left-of-center anti-US Eleftherotypia printed an article on February 15th entitled "Investigation into Welch Case reportedly concluded." The essence of the story was that the assassins were not Greek, and that the Americans tried to impede the investigation to obfuscate their own blame for the murder. The American Secret Services, the piece continued, mobilized the US press to place responsibility for the crime on the KGB and to discredit the Greek press, which might reveal additional facts. Even 1 year later, like with this cable from December 23, 1976, there were still all sorts of rumors portrayed in the media, without anyone ever publishing 17 November's manifesto that they had all received. Because of that media reaction, on December 26, 1975, 17 November members did a second press release for the same incident. We translated that, and it said, "Press release. 2 days after the exemplary and just execution of the chief of the CIA, there is a never-seen-before phenomenon. While from the first moment we expressed our political responsibility as the 17 November group for that fair action, in the newspapers there were many things written apart from the truth, such as it was intelligence services, it was an act of provocation, that Arabs were behind it, that the shooters had foreign accent, that they are Turkish, there were links to the actions of Vienna and Paris, the kidnapping of Vienna, etc. Although that same Tuesday night we sent political statements to all newspapers in which we explained the reasoning of this anti-imperialism action. Additionally, we called specific newspapers, assuming the responsibility of this action and informing them where we placed our manifesto in specific locations of Athens. Finally, the same night we shared manifestos to several neighborhoods of Athens. So at least the evening newspapers of Wednesday should have known the truth. And not only those, but even more so, those of Thursday were competing in crime novels and romance stories with the intention to create confusion, hide the truth, and poison the people. The political editors were transformed into novel writers. Anything possible to hide the truth was written. Is this the so well-known truth in which the press is searching for? We want to highlight this tactic and demand the complete publication of the manifesto we sent on Tuesday to the press. To make things more mysterious, it took 27 years for 17 November to be dismantled, and to this day, only one of the 15 convicted members could have taken part in this operation. That was the founder of 17 November, Alexandros Giotopoulos, who would have been 31 years old when that assassination happened. Everyone else would have been in their early teen years in 1975, thus not matching the profiles of 3 grown-up men that was reported. Additionally, Giotopoulos has been refuting his participation and he hasn't been proven guilty all the way to this day for this assassination. The weapon was never discovered, and although all of them were charged with various crimes, no one has been officially charged with Richard Dick Welch assassination to this day. Now if we move to Psychiko, we'll find an upper-class quiet neighborhood full of high-profile people, diplomatic missions, and consequently, spies. The residence of the CIA Chief of Station of Greece in those early days of the Cold War was demolished sometime between 2004 and 2008, as you can see from the satellite imagery. In this AFIO publication we read that in late 2003, Molly and Patrick Welch and a group of current and former US Embassy officers, including the then ambassador Thomas Miller, held a tree planting ceremony at Welch's former residence in the Psychiko district of Athens. And despite the building being demolished, we read that again in January 2019, a small group of Athens embassy officers also placed flowers and said a prayer together at the front gate of Welch's Athens residence near the site of his murder. Those indicate the historical importance of this spy spot for CIA officers too. Actually, even to this day you can find the exact gate that Welch was assassinated at, and some parts of the neighborhood haven't really changed. And that's the spy spot of this episode, the house of the CIA Chief of Station during the Cold War era in Greece, which was also the location that Richard Welch was assassinated on the night of December 23, 1975. Although this was the tombstone of this spy spot, we shouldn't disregard its significant espionage historical value, as it was the house of the CIA Chief of Station of Greece for several years, even before Welch became the COS. It's a spy spot with such rich and significant espionage historical value that is worth documenting despite its sad end. Richard Welch was buried in Arlington National Cemetery, and here's some footage from this. Of course, if you ever visit the CIA's headquarters, and specifically the OHB, the original headquarters building, there is a star for Richard Welch on the memorial wall on the right side of the lobby, and his name is also written in the book that's underneath that. This CIA memorial wall was also unveiled for the first time just a few months prior to Welch's assassination in July of 1975. Spying is a high-risk profession where the individuals involved may face the ultimate sacrifice, and an inconspicuous residence in a quiet neighborhood of Athens might be hiding more secrets than anyone could imagine. But that's the world of espionage, where nothing is as it seems.